are set.
Yes.
They're set. And there is a couple of things that happen in this year's playoffs that are fascinating when you think about it. So obviously it is Texas and Ohio State, which, by the way, I am all in on the Buckeyes in that game, but that's a conversation maybe for another day.
Agreed.
And Notre Dame, Penn State. Not a single conference champion made the Final Four, the semifinals. And not a single team that received a bye won a game either. So all 4 byes were conference champions, but the 5th one, throw them in there, Clemson, didn't win one either. So no bye teams won, and no conference champion made the semifinal. Do you know what that tells me? You needed to expand the playoff. You needed to.
Yeah.
Because the best teams in college football this year on the field are still alive. They've proven it. Ohio State is one of the 4 best teams in college football. Notre Dame is most certainly one of the best 4 teams in college football.
Yeah.
Texas had to win twice to get to this point. They got a draw that leads this conversation to be a little bit unfair, I suppose, but Penn State had to win 2 games to get here.
Mm-hmm.
The expansion was the right call.
It always was, though. I mean, last year, Georgia and Florida State deserved to be in. I know Florida State would have gotten waxed, but they had done enough in their – because if we say the regular season has to mean something, right? So when you go 13-0 or 12-0 and you win your conference, you should be allowed to play for a national championship. There's no getting around that fact. Georgia last year was probably the best team in the country the whole season and probably would have beaten Michigan if they had the chance. But they didn't because they lost 1 game at the absolute wrong time. So, yeah. I mean, people have been banging the drum for years, and I know you have a lot of people who are like, oh, 4 was perfect, or some people would tell you 2 was perfect. But you're just wrong. You're just wrong. You know.
Let's demonstrate that a little bit. In the BCS, it would have been Oregon and Georgia.
I mean, come on.
That would have been the BCS.
Yeah.
Georgia, who got essentially blown out by Notre Dame, and Oregon, who got walloped by Ohio State.
Yeah.
In the 4-team playoff, it would have been Oregon versus Penn State and Georgia versus Texas.
Closer?
Closer.
Yeah. But even then, like the team I think is the best team is Ohio State. Ohio State is the most talented team in college football. They just had the game against Oregon at Oregon. You can't. I mean, that's fine. They lost to a really good team.
And they fumbled on the way into the end zone early in the game.
And they were driving, and their quarterback has a brain fart, and they can't kick a game-winning field goal. Simple as that, right? But the Michigan game, they just, Michigan just has the voodoo on them right now. That's fine. But that's the best team. And they deserve a chance to play, and they're proving it right now.
Yeah. Now, the next question. Well,
if all chalk had held, I might disagree with this. If it had just been chalk, and I guess it would have been difficult to have chalk, right? Because that would have involved Boise and Arizona State winning. But if right now it was those 4 teams, it was Penn State, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State, Oregon, I might think a little differently. Because we're like, we got where we would have ended up anyway. But no, I think the 12th team was correct.
Somebody says Notre Dame lost in Northern Illinois. I don't think they are one of the best, but they are getting hot when it matters. That's the way of the playoffs. That's the way of every playoffs, though. I mean, that's why the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are so good. It's not about what they do in week 2. It's about how they get themselves ready to play when it ultimately does matter the most. Notre Dame proved it by beating an 11-1 team from the Big Ten soundly, and then the SEC champions soundly. I don't think they're. I'm quoting the texter. I don't think they're one of the best on the field. They have shown you that they absolutely are, though. Dominated 11-1 team out of the Big Ten and dominated the SEC champion. How can we not sit here and say they're not one of the best teams in the sport?
Yeah, they're definitely one of the. Definitely one. They had a bad loss. There's no question about that. But you can't. That's the best thing about this 12-team playoff is that you have a bad loss, one early season loss. It doesn't, 2 years ago or last year, Notre Dame's season is over after the Northern Illinois game. It's over. Ole Miss's season would have been over. I know they didn't make the playoff, but their season would have been over when they lost to Kentucky. At that point, it's just like, they can't get there. Georgia's season, in some ways, people would have thought it was over when they lost to Alabama.
And it most definitely was over when they lose to Ole Miss.
Right, yeah, for sure. So honestly, in a 4-team playoff, does Georgia get in this year? I mean, I know we're saying
on the committee's rankings this year, they would have.
But is it a little different if that's a 2-loss SEC team when you've got 2, 1-loss Big Ten teams sitting there or whatever? I don't know.
They wouldn't have put a third Big Ten team in. Over the SEC champion, they wouldn't have.
But then Texas gets in? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
I'm telling you right now.
There's your debate, right? Is Texas?
There's a lot of debate. A lot of debate at that point. So,
somebody says the BCS was better. They should use the BCS formula to pick the playoff teams.
I don't mind that idea.
I don't mind that idea.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's pretty close. But the idea that we're going to let 2 teams play for it, I mean, no, you can't do that.
Lucas says expand the playoff, no buys. Every higher seed gets a home game in the first round. I think the second round as well. Those home games were electric. I mean, is that the next step here too, though? Because all 4 bye teams lost, and it's not totally.
I think that's an outlier.
I think it's an outlier, and I think once they adjust the conference champion component of it, I mean, yeah. I like Boise State a lot. I love their coach, Ingenti. They weren't the number 3 overall seed in this tournament.
If Texas and Ohio State had been the 3 and the 4, or Penn State had been the 3 and the 4, right, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
No.
It's just an outlier. Next year, if it looks a little more realistic, or not realistic, if it looks a little more normal, and your top 4 are Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12 champions, or I mean, I guess the Big 12 champion would have to be in there, but I don't know. I just don't see that. Yeah. Next year, the ACC champion should be, because I think with what Clemson's bringing back, they're going to be a real contender, and then Miami will be active in the portal again. We'll see what they can do. But next year, the ACC champion should be a better team than it was this year.
You would think so, for sure. And that's why I think the rust argument that some people, especially the people at The Athletic, are making, the bye teams were rusty. I think that's kind of ignoring reality, in that it doesn't matter how rusty Boise State was. That they were physically outmatched by Penn State. They were overmatched. Mm-hmm. Arizona State, yes, they got off to kind of a rough start in the game, but they didn't appear to be rusty to me.
No, they weren't rusty at all. I don't think
Georgia wasn't rusty either.
Georgia wasn't rusty, but
they just got beat by a team that's better than them.
Yeah, they just not having. I know Beck didn't have the best year, but not having your starting quarterback matters.
It does matter
in that situation. So that narrative. By the way, if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm just furious right now. It's like, look.
Yeah. Corey says hot at the right time is why Ole Miss has a baseball national championship. Absolutely,
it's not wrong. That's not incorrect.
And what better way is there to? I mean, we can do it like soccer, where there's no playoffs at all, and if you're just on top of the table at the end, you win.
We just end the season, and Oregon's the national champion.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.